Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we will be exploring the primitive data types in Java. They are called primitive because they are basic and they are pre-defined. That means they're already created by the Java language. They are also called primitive because they store the values within themselves. For example, if I gave you a £50 or $50 note, then the note in itself is worth £50 or $50. The value is stored in the note itself. There are 8 types of primitive data types in Java. Let's have a look at the primitive data types. So this is a table illustration of the primitive data types in Java. So we've got the byte, which stores integers from -128 to 127. It uses 1 byte of storage space. The byte of storage space is known as the width or the size of the data type. So we normally would use the byte data type if the storage space is a concern, or if we are certain the value of the variable we want to store does not exceed -128 to 127 in range. For an example, we can use the byte data type to store the age of a user, and it's unlikely that the user's age will ever exceed 127 years old, but you never know, there might be some exceptions. Next, we've got the short data type. This basically uses 2 bytes of storage space and has a range of 32768 to 32767. The next data type is the integer. Basically, an integer are numbers with no fractional parts. An integer is a number, or integers are numbers with no fractional parts. So the byte, the short, the int, and the long are all used to store integers, that is numbers with no fractional parts. The int data type is used to store 4 bytes of storage space. Okay, it is the most commonly used data type for storing integers, and it has the most practical range. Next, we've got the long data type. The long data type uses 8 bytes of storage space. It is rarely used unless you really want to store large integer values, such as the number of inhabitants on Earth. So it's not a data type that is frequently used. If you want to specify a long data type or the value, you'll need to add the suffix L to the end of the number. So the first 4 data types are used to store integers. Then we've got the bottom 4, which they are used for storing floating point numbers. That is numbers with fractional parts. They include the float. The float data type uses 4 bytes of storage. Okay, and it has a precision of 7 digits. This means that it can, if you use the float to store a number, the number can be rounded up to approximately 7 digits. The next is the double. The double data type uses 8 bytes of storage and is commonly used type of float. So when you are usually specifying a floating point number in Java, usually you will be going for a double. So anytime you want Java to treat the floating point number as a float, you will have to add a suffix f to the end of that. So the float and the double are used to store floating type or floating point numbers. That is numbers with fractional parts. So when you want to use a floating point number, you have to use a float or a double. The double is the default when you want to specify a floating point number. Next, we've got the Boolean data type. This data type holds 2 values, either true or false. Then we've got the char data type. Char stands for character. Okay, so basically it is used to store a single Unicode characters such as an A, the @ P, or other related Unicode characters. It uses 2 bytes of memory. So just to go through this again, the first 4, the byte, the short, the int, and the long data types are used to store integers, that is numbers without fractional parts, while the float and the double are used to store floating point numbers, that is numbers with fractional parts. The Boolean data type holds 2 values, either true or false, and the char data type is used to store a single character. We are going to have a quick look at another data type, which is called a string data type. It is not actually a primitive data type, technically. It belongs to the Java language and from the Java language package, and inside that it has a string class. So it is attached to the string class, which belongs to the Java language package. So basically it provides support for character string. When you use a string, you have to enclose the text in quotes, and when you do that, it turns that into a string object. This piece of text, for example, is referred to as a string. So you can see that it is enclosed with quotes on either side. So these are the default value for the fields if you are specifying the data types. So most of them have a default value of 0, apart from the Boolean. The default value for a Boolean is false. Normally, when you're specifying data types, sometimes you have to put the prefix at the end of the number. So for this one here, you got L, which indicates a long data type. The F indicates a float. The D indicates a double. So that's it for this lecture on primitive data types. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.